The Tuesday, November 14, 2017, regular Board of County Commissioners meeting will now come to order. Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate you all. At this time, we'll begin with we'll have a moment of silent reflection for our first responders, followed by an invocation led by Stan Bowling, our Community Development Director, and then we will have Commissioner Susan Adams lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise, and I ask you all to please join us in a moment of silent reflection for all of our first responders who serve us every day.
Lord God, we do want to thank you this morning for the many things that you do and your ways. Many times we're not familiar with them or we're not aware of them, but we do want to thank you for them. We thank you today for life. We thank you for each other. We thank you for the encounters that you will give us the rest of this day. We admit that many times we are guilty of comparing ourselves to others and looking down on others and using pridefulness and judgment rather than discernment and wisdom. So we ask that you would give us discernment and wisdom this morning, not just in the decisions, but in the way that we conduct our lives and we handle the encounters that you will give us today. We ask that all the things that we do today would be done in a way that pleases you and that serves your purposes. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Stan. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. At this time, I ask if there are any additions, deletions to the agenda. If not,
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
and that's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We'll now move on to proclamations and presentations, and the presentation by Indian River County Tax Collector Carol Jean Jordan on the summary of current operations.
Good morning.
Good morning, Carol Jean.
You are literally getting us hot off the press. We're just, as you know, finishing up our new year and or starting our new year, finishing up our old. So we're kind of putting everything together as we speak. But first off, I'd like to thank the county for their participation and thank county staff, especially my own staff, and Robbie Brackett for what's going to happen tonight, which is our open house on the west office out on 82nd Avenue. Our landlord was very supportive and did that renovation, the basic, all the hard work, the construction, the reconstruction. He did that all at his expense, and we certainly appreciate it. I know he did it partly to keep us there, but you know, we don't always have those situations, do we, Jason? And it was a pleasure. We were closed for 3 weeks, and again, we have to say thank you so much to our staff, to our clerks that literally worked off tables in a back room, continuing to wait on customers from the back. And, you know, some people just won't go anyplace else but the office that they like. So they waited on the ones that we could back in the back, and then Robbie rebuilt the front, and then we did the back later. So thank you. And there is an open house from 5 to 7 tonight. I think I've texted just about everybody that I have a text for, and we hope you can stop by for our little ribbon cutting with the Vero Indian River Chamber of Commerce. That said, we're looking so forward, and we thank you for making the purchase of the new Sebastian facility. I'd like to kind of make this a public announcement for those that are here and for those that are on television that we are not currently issuing driver's license in Sebastian. There's a fiber issue. Jason, I know we just shake our head if it's not one thing at the Sebastian office, it's another. we're trying to get through it until we can be in our new facility, and I know you all are fast tracking that, but it's the fiber is out between apparently here, the clerk's office there in Sebastian, our office, and it's making it not possible to issue driver's license. So I'm just apologize. I encourage everybody to go. If they can wait a few days, wait a couple days. But I will tell you that leads into yesterday's trans count, and it was kind of interesting. Now, some of this, of course, is electronic. We received a big bank escrow account last night, but a lot of it is hard work by customers. We had 6,793 transactions yesterday. Of that, in the main office, 712 were handled by clerks. Just a fantastic, number of transactions that were handled. Mr. O'Brien, Commissioner O'Brien was in there. He saw it was kind of crazy. I say that. I mean, we need to seriously look at expanding the main office. I think I've certainly talked to Rich, and I don't know if Rich is here, but he's hiding. Okay. Well, thanks. I know
Oh, he's right
I'm
here.
forever. Rich, Rich, could you do this? Rich, could you do that? And he's awesome, and I thank you all for having him in our county structure, because he does an incredible job. And I mean, it's huge for us because we're always asking him for something. But
So, Carol Jane, do you see any plans for expansion out in like Fellsmere in the future? Or you've kind of got north and central covered and west, but how about out
well,
towards Fellsmere?
it's funny because we always think of the West office serving Fellsmere, yet we see the Fellsmere customers coming to the Sebastian office. So I think we will have more space at the Sebastian office. We're looking for anywhere from 14 to 18 cubbies there. So we'll have more space there. Our critical space, our West office is the least busy, not to say they're not busy, but then our critical space is here.
Okay.
And I don't know how we drive folks to the West office or to the Sebastian office. And certainly, I would like to sit down and talk to you all about possibly a small satellite office on the beach, where we could take, on Vero's Beach, some small facility where we could do limited services. We could take taxes. People like to bring their taxes. They like to pay them. They like to see you face to face. So we could do things like that. We could do motor vehicle registrations there, simple, easy, just renewals, that type thing, and take a load off our other offices. But what I'm really getting to is, I think, and we're starting to run some numbers on it, but I think we're having, and I see it because being at the counter and waiting on people yesterday, I bet I had a dozen people myself coming in, getting 2 new Florida driver's licenses and registering their cars. I mean, they are moving into Indian River County and becoming permanent residents. I mean, they may only be here part of the year, but they want Florida as their residency. And of course, I say, of course, we have no income tax. Why do you want to be up north somewhere?
Right. And I will say, when I went over there, Carol Jean was working the front reception desk. She had about 8 things she was juggling and, keeping it going. But
And it's unfortunate they get me to wait on them, because there's not a lot of information I can get. I mean, I can't help them. I can't issue a driver's license, but I think a big smile and a welcome, and thank you for being here, and thank you for your patience. That's kind of what we tell everybody every day, because it is busy. So Jason, think about what we could do to get some more space over there. We had everything full yesterday, and it's getting crowded. And we're not even in season yet. So think about, it's not going to be this year, of course, but you all think about what we can do in the future to expand over there, whether we go out into that patio area. I know we've talked to Rich about it, and we've looked at it, or we go back with cubbies that way. It's a rather restrictive facility for us to move around in, but we'll do whatever we can, and I know, Jason, you will as well. So just keep it in mind. You'll probably see that coming up. And I don't want to take up a lot of your time. We've done so many things, and Eve was sweet enough to list everything today, but I'm not going to go over everything with you, except to say we do have 2 new vans. One is our IT van, because we've found that we're having to move more and more equipment. We have printers out, we have computers out, so everything comes into primarily the main office, other than limited supplies, so we're always doing that. So we got the high van. We don't have a name on it yet. We're thinking it's going to be a contest. We're going to think up what we're going to call it. But it's definitely a great asset to us because they're able to leave things in it. It's outfitted with the little cubicles so you can have wiring and anything that you might need rather than having to restock every day into the back of a smaller vehicle. They can have everything with them that they need. So it's a traveling service van, much like our company, Jordan Sprinklers, does. So we were able to kind of replicate that. And then we have a small van that we're now using for our run for the day. It's the little one. It looks like a child. The big van had their own little baby, and it's perfect for the staff to go pick up mail because, as you know, they pick up heavy trays of mail, and having to put it down low into the back of a regular vehicle really didn't work out. So we're probably going to call that the Gracie Mobile because she does that, and bless her heart for running our errands all day long and picking up that mail. And you don't want me to get into mail service because that's a whole nother thing for another day. But anyway, of course, what we're here for is to present our funds, our excess funds back to you. I'd like to just mention how we got there. We're at, well, I'll tell you what I really have that Eve was able to put together for me, and I so appreciate it, was the amount of money that we've given back to the county over the years I've been in office, and that's since 2008. And it's $25,704,147. 25. We'll just round it out to $25 million, and that's hard earned. And I think we've been good fiduciary, responsible folks over there, and kept things at a bare minimum when we could, and have only spent money when we've had to. Our budget has been a total of 16.32 increase since taking office in 2008. And while 16% sounds like a lot, it's $528,000. And considering what we've been able to do, reference our technical abilities, our software abilities, increase in staff. We have more staff now than we've had, and we've have to, plus serving so many people. I'm really proud of our numbers, and I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Adrian, to Brad, to Debbie, to Eve, to Lori, and to everybody that's taken on what they've taken on with driver's license and all the things that we do with, we actually print birth certificates over in our office, so that's not as much of a convenience here because they can certainly go to the health department, but we have longer hours. We also do that in Sebastian, and we're setting it up at West Office. That's so they'll have a birth certificate for their driver's license if they were born in Florida. And of course, we do the concealed weapon permit applications. We're doing those now. We did 16 yesterday, 10 originals, 6 renewals, and we received $22 just to the tax collector's office or to you for the concealed weapon application license. And we're also, the renewals, we received 12. We've also working on legislative approval to do replacements if you break your card or you lose it. And we've gotten the approval of Mrs. Hammer, who kind of stays on top of all that. She's, as you know, with the NRA and the trust fund that comes out of trust fund funds through the Department of Ag, and they're on board with that, and we will receive $12 for that. There's also some different things that they're going to do online. I haven't quite gotten the concept of how they're going to do that as far as the applications and so forth, but should someone just need their fingerprints done or their photo taken, they will make that available through our offices, through their equipment. That'll be $6 and $6 each. So we're looking forward to that because we do have people coming in for wanting replacements. But they're really, the general public is really excited about the concealed weapon programs. They'll come in, I think they'd wait an hour if they have to, but we take appointments, of course, but primarily we take the walk-ins, and we don't turn folks away. So we really have extended our services, and oh yes, and Jason, you'll be happy to hear, we're going to be, we've been tentatively approved to do TSA. That's TSA pre-checks. Several of you have talked to me about that. And we're also going to do, with that, they have approved us, and they're very, very strict on how they do that. And they don't want to do Sebastian, they want to do West Office because of its proximity to I-95. And so whatever they want to do, and Mr. Brackett has agreed to put the room together. It has to be a private room. They're going to have 10 by 14 is the size of the room. And then they will split it because Melbourne, Brevard County is the first tax collector in the state to do TSA pre-check. She's only doing that. We're going to get to do both. We're going to do TSA pre-check and then the state identification forms. I think that's things like TWIC, they call it, and we don't have all our details yet, but that'll bring more income and just, frankly, more customer service because that's what we're all about is one-stop shopping.
Well, Carol-Jean, thank you and your staff for the unparalleled service that you provide the community. We hear it on a near daily basis. And over the years, when you've had any transition with your locations, you've had to work in a modular, you've worked in an RV, you've worked in a tent, you've worked in out of a truck. And I want you to know that the service to the community was not interrupted to any great lengths. Again, you had to limit some services, but we look forward to a trend analysis for any other future developments for the site development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and we so appreciate it. And of course, we're going to bring you our
Staff.
annual check, and that's going to be $2,732,505.
Did you mean to say
We
2
have-
million, Carol-Jean?
Excuse me?
I think you meant to say 2
2
million.
million?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
What'd I say?
we'll accept 2,000.
No,
but
no, no, no. Did
2
I say?
million
I'm sorry.
has
2
got
million.
such a better feel to
No,
it.
no. You would have a heart attack if it was 2,000. No,
No,
2,732,000.
some would offer
Yeah,
2,000, in fact.
I almost fell over here when I did that.
All right. Just short of $3 million, and we are happy to give it to you. We make a real effort to be conservative because that's who we are. That's who this county is. And I can tell you, having traveled all over the state, having worked in Tallahassee with some of these lobbying things that we have to do, you hear about counties that are, I mean, they're just deficit counties. They're in terrible financial straits. And I'm always so proud to say that my county made the tough decisions. You all cut things when we had to in the recession, and, you know, we're just now coming back. And I'm just proud of everything that you all do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol-Jean.
And the check. Thank you all from the...
Yeah, there goes your meeting record.
Okay, starting. Maybe we can make it up.
Nah, so I'll be impressed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
And they earned it. Boy, did they work hard.
We have a check.
Come on, both sides, and let's do.
Oh, no, we have the in-house photographer right here. He does a marvelous job. How do you want it? Uneven number, uneven number. There you go. 3 and 3.
All right.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's hear it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, as they're exiting, I did have one question for Carol-Jean on the TSA pre. That is a great program, and I know when I did mine, I had to go to some strange place in Orlando to
Port
get
or
it.
something, right?
But what I noticed when I was in line for the TSA pre, there was also a large number of personnel that needed certain security clearances that also went through the same TSA pre kind of process. So I don't know if that'll open up once you get TSA pre, if that may open the doors for some other background documentation type program. But but it'll be great to have that here for the traveling public.
It will, and you know, you would think that they're very particular. Morpho Trust, who does our printers and things, is part of that project. They're kind of the government provider of that, but they're very particular on how they handle things. Everything in that little cubby is theirs. The paint on the wall has to be a certain color, everything that goes with it. But you're right, there's a thorough background check of our employees that will do it. You have to be, of course, a U.S. citizen, but they'll do a background check, and then they're very strict on how it's handled. So, but we look forward to it. That and the state, you really, we're always talking about the numbers, Jason. We don't make as much money on the TSA pre-check itself. We make, I think, $4. But on the state, there's more income on that. So we're looking forward to that as well. And again, it's a customer service. It's one-stop shopping. But anything that you see that we might be able to do, Tim, you're a great, or Commissioner, you're a great resource for that. So please let us know, and we'll certainly apply for it.
Great, thank you.
Okay,
They
thank you all.
somehow knew the state would get a bigger cut of that than us.
Of course. Actually, I don't know that the TSA pre-check is federal. Yeah.
Next is a presentation by Felix Cruz, the Executive Director for the Youth Guidance Mentoring and Activities Program. Good morning, Mr. Cruz.
That's a tough act to follow. Usually people want
No,
more
you
money
could
and
do
not
it.
give money back,
You
so.
could do it.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank the commission for the opportunity to come up and address you. As mentioned, my name is Felix Cruz. I am the Executive Director of Youth Guidance Mentoring Activities Agency and Programs. And first of all, I would like to acknowledge our staff. Darlene Medeiros, Bonnie Brown. Darlene coordinates our mentors, and Bonnie Brown is our office administrator and also one of our main supporters, one of our board members, James McSweeney. And I would like to thank them for coming up. First of all, a couple of months ago, we closed on the building, as you guys know, the old county library, which was the county offices for a bit, where Youth Guidance has been there since 1973, and that you guys have been providing support for us since then. We've been providing mentoring services in the county for Indian River families for over 45 years. And with that said, I wanted to just give you an update quickly of what's going on. After buying the building, which you guys really helped us and supported us in that effort, we are working with the Vero Beach Historical Society on designating the building for historical preservation. The building will be renamed the Rita Dion Mentoring Academy in honor of the founder and first executive director. Redevelopment is targeted for completion in the fall of 2018 or 2019. And what we plan to do is construct a mini multi-purpose room for large group activities, build a self-contained kitchen, dining room to serve meals, and house our cooking programs and some of our other programs, and create a STEM-centered learning lab with state-of-the-art computer and graphics equipment to continue to serve and change the lives of many more disadvantaged children. And of course, again, we couldn't have done that without your support over these years. I know that many commissioners have changed over the years. Some of you have been here a little longer, have been really at the head of support, providing that support. I know Jason's always been there for us, so we'd like to acknowledge and thank that. So with that said, what I would like to do is make a couple of presentations, 3 to be exact, and acknowledgement. And the first would be to someone who's been at the end of our telephone, and it was interesting that I hadn't met her, but I know her voice very well. Youth Guidance Mentoring Activities Program extends its deepest gratitude to Indian River County employee Kathy Daniel for customer service above and beyond the call of duty to our staff and families. And this is someone who, every time that we picked up the phone with a problem, I know in the 5 years since I've been in and previous to that, always been there, always there to help us and to guide us through and sending the resources our way. So I would like to ask her to come down and accept this. And the other is her partner in crime, I guess, is she probably had him on a short leash every time. His Youth Guidance calling again, Gene, could you go down there and see what they need? And he was always there, almost right away, coming down. It was a problem with the air conditioner or electricity or light bulb, anything that we couldn't do and we couldn't take care of. He was always there, always been a good friend. Gene Kemp. Again, sometimes we forget to acknowledge our buddies on the front lines, and that's why we wanted to do that. And then lastly, of course, this one says, Youth Guidance Mentoring and Activities Program extends its deepest gratitude to the Indian River County Commission in recognition of the relentless support provided to youth guidance families since 1973. And we really thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and our families really thank you for all that you've done for us. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you on behalf of the children. Next, we'll have the approval of regular meeting minutes for October 3rd and October 10th.
So moved.
Second?
And that's a motion by Vice Chairman O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Solari. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Commissioners? Anything of interest? I mean, they are of interest, but interest for further discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just pull item E, the internal audit for the clerk's office, just for, like to hear the clerk speak a little bit about this. And
Item E echo, and I did see him here, and that was my intention as well. That's good. And any further from the board? Is there any member of the public that wishes to have any item further discussed? Seeing none, having given ample opportunity.
move to approve consent as amended.
Second. That's a motion by Vice Chairman O'Brien, seconded by myself. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Vice Chairman O'Brien, item E
Yes,
echo.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any concerns with this, but I do, I would like to hear from the clerk. There's some interesting things on here that I think he might want to expound on, because I think a lot of people don't really understand what the clerk does for us, and I think in this audit role, it brings a lot of things to light that I think the public might find of interest, and knowing that, you know, someone of just integrity is looking after the taxpayer dollars and making sure that everything is accounted for and every T is crossed and every I is dotted. And I just would like the clerk to go ahead and expand on a few things here and highlight some of the things that you've been doing.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. I'm Jeff Smith, Clerk of the Court and Comptroller. I'm proud that I've been able to take some current staff and create an internal audit division without incurring any more cost to the county. And my internal auditor is Ed Halsey. He's here as well. Our goal is to, as outlined in the statutes, we're allowed to do any internal auditing of the Board of County Commissioners and the clerk's office as well. So we're looking out on both sides, in my office as well as your offices. The primary target initially was TERS tax, and we've done some heavy hitting on the TERS tax, and as you can see there, we've generated some additional revenue. And on another agenda item, you see the quarterly TERS tax report, and those increases are partially as a result of the internal auditing that we've been doing and following up on hotels and short-term rentals that are required to be collecting the TERS tax and remitting it to us, and for some reason had not been doing that. So we're continuing that hard-pressed effort to get a hold of everybody that is required to do that. It's produced good results, and I thank Ed for his doggedness on this area, and I want him to continue on that first, because I see that as an untapped area where obviously that's revenue that comes right to the county, and we need that for beach restoration and tourist attraction and, you know, commerce and everything else. So that's a big area. We, in addition, along with that initiative, we initiated an agreement with the state of Florida that we can share information to them and they can share information to us on the tourist tax, and we can share information to them on sales tax. That gives us another lead in on those areas that, on those payers that should be paying the tourist tax. That's been fruitful as well. We've expanded our subrecipient monitoring activities as a result of a new GASB requirement that requires us to look into further detail into those that are qualified for the subrecipient grantee auditing, and we've done that. We've looked at the two entities, the SRA and the housing, that are required to be doing that, and we're upgrading our procedures as we speak to proceed in the future with more substantial subrecipient grant auditing. We have looked at two charitable organizations that you provide money to, and we have done some auditing of those two just to make sure that the financial statements that they and the operations that they report to you are in fact what's going on, and that's protecting, again, taxpayer money. We're going to continue with that on a random basis in the next fiscal year. We also looked at the FP&L's franchise agreement with the county and to make sure that they're remitting the correct franchise fees to the county, and everything looked good in that audit as well. We've continued every year. Some of the things we routinely do is we send letters to banks making sure that there's no hidden bank accounts that we're not aware of. That's happened in other counties. And so that's why we do that, is to make sure that there's no bank accounts that are set up by an organization related to the county that we're not aware of. That has come back clean as well. We monitored leases for compliance, the leases that we execute, and make sure that everything is all right there. We routinely make sure before we pay an invoice that we're taking the eligible discounts that the vendor has allowed us to take. In some situations, that's not feasible because it's more beneficial to the county to make sure that the items that have been received are in fact received, and sometimes that takes a little longer, especially with the utility facilities out and about, so it takes a little while longer to verify that the actual material has been received. So in that regard, it's better to make sure that's there than to rush the invoice and get the discount taken. But the golf course is 100% really good about getting their invoices to us so we can take advantage of the discounts. And a lot of other departments are very good about that as well. So we make sure that we're taking the discounts, and also that we're not paying sales tax, because we're not supposed to be paying sales tax. So we make sure that that is taken care of as well. We also routinely do annual audits of the fixed assets for all constitutional officers and the board, make sure that those fixed assets are accounted for and haven't grown legs and walked away. I'm proud to announce that the person I chose for this job went through the internal auditing certification process and passed the exam and is now a certified internal auditor. So Ed Halsey has done that on his own time, and I appreciate his diligence in that regard, because it lends credibility and gives him more access to information and procedures and best practices on how to accomplish what we're set out to do. So that's in a nutshell what we've accomplished this year. I appreciate Commissioner O'Brien asking for this little summary.
Well, Jeff, as we all know, more and more the state, is taking aim at local governments, and they're actually, actively seeking where, governments may have, messed up. And I, for one, want to thank you for making sure that our finances are clean. It only strengthens our case to say, no, we're doing things the right way. We're good stewards of the taxpayer dollars, and to fend off that attack from the state legislature. So,
and that's the attitude that we're taking here. Is we want to
absolutely, and if there is any discrepancy, let's find it and cut it off. Nip it right in the bud and correct it and do it the right way. So I think you all are doing a great job. I appreciate the work that you and Ed are putting into this. I think it only makes us stronger, and so I'm very pleased with that. And Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll move that we accept the fiscal year 2017 internal audit annual report.
Second?
Same motion by Vice Chairman O'Brien and seconded by Commissioner Solari. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr.
We
Chairman.
appreciate you and your staff. Next item is a public hearing, which is regarding an ordinance change to allow the reduction of the equivalent residential units, ERUs, on single-family homes. This is legislative in nature.
Thank you very much. Actually, Chair, I'll handle the item, although I'm sure Vincent Burke is in the audience to help if I slip up. There are approximately 60 single-family dwellings that have more than one ERU associated with those dwellings. There are two different reasons for this situation. One is there are scenarios in which a homeowner has purchased maybe an adjacent lot next to theirs that is vacant, and then they've done a unity of title, and now you have essentially, and that other vacant lot originally had an ERU associated with it, and now that property owner has an ERU for both of those lots that's associated with their bill. Another scenario occurs when a developer has maybe has purchased ERUs for a subdivision. The development plan has been modified through time, and now instead of having several smaller units, they have just fewer larger units, and now those larger units are associated with more than one ERU. So those are two different scenarios. Staff came forward, identified this as a problem, brought an ordinance to the board at the October 24th meeting. Board authorized staff to move forward with that ordinance and set a public hearing for today, and thus we have brought that ordinance back to the board. The attached ordinance would allow for certain single-family customers now to move forward to request that they reduce the number of ERUs associated with their single-family residence down to one ERU. County Attorney recommends that the chair open up the public hearing for any public comment that there may be, take that public comment, close the public hearing, and then move to approve the ordinance as presented. And with that, I'll be here for any questions. Thank you.
Commissioners, any inquiry of the council?
None, thank you.
Seeing none at this time, I will open up the public hearing. Public hearing is now opened, and if you have any comments, please state your name and address for the record. Good morning, Mr. Johnson.
Good morning. Bob Johnson, Carlwyn Subdivision. What is the definition of a single-family home under this ordinance? Is that the same as a villa where two people in one house, two families in one house?
Under the ordinance, minimum equivalent residential units, one is a single-family designation, a category of dwelling units including multiplex, modular, and prefabricated on individually owned lots. That is the description of it under 201.07.
Okay. Some subdivisions have houses with two families, one building. Is that a single-family home?
Now, there's the differences between that and a multifamily designation, which is the category of grouped dwelling units, generally master metered.
I'm asking the question, what is the difference between a single-family home and a villa?
You're referring to like a duplex?
Right.
Okay, so we have two families living in...
Are we charging, we're going to continue to charge GREs, or are we discontinuing the process of charging GREs? Or
Well, we're not discontinuing the use of ERUs or charging ERUs. What we're doing is when you have certain situations where you have a single-family home, and that single-family home has multiple ERUs associated with it. Now, I will tell you, it's based in our ordinance around the amount of water that is produced. So I will pull that out for you.
It's an equivalent...
So it is...
What is it we're changing then?
What we're doing is you have certain homes that have, someone may have a house, and they, instead of paying for one ERU for that house, they're actually paying for two ERUs, or equivalent residential units. What we're allowing for is if somebody has a single-family home and their maximum monthly water use ranges from 0 to 300 gallons per day, or maximum amount basis from 0 to 250 gallons per day on any given, or maximum month, then what we allow them to do is no longer be charged as having two ERUs, but we'll reduce them down to just one ERU.
Yeah, I live in a single-family home. A subdivision may have, a villa may have single buildings with two families in it. Is there any distinction between the two as far as GREs are concerned?
This ordinance doesn't impact that in the least little bit.
At all?
Basically,
No.
it takes
Is that-
care of a historical anomaly.
Yeah, this is just about the single-family homes that have more than one associated with them. This is not designed to cover any other multifamily dwelling situation.
So they will,
or other-
they will continue to get double billed?
No, Bob,
Well-
in a villa or a duplex like that,
they-
they each have their own individual water account. So each family is paying one ERU, even though there's two of them in one building, they're gonna have a separate account. So they're only paying their one ERU. As Dylan and Commissioner Solari have said, this is a case where you have a home and the owner has bought an adjacent lot, and so they're now paying for two ERUs, and this allows them to just combine it for one, which would be the appropriate amount of what they're using for their household. But like a villa or duplex, you're gonna have two water accounts, and each one will be paying the ERU.
So
And-
we're really talking about an account.
Yeah, it's a kind of, and Bob, I apologize, I was confused because I deem myself, for my wife and I, to live in a villa, although it's a single-family unit. There aren't multiple families that live in our villa, so we just have different definitions, I assume, of what
Okay,
you
we
deem
have
a
a
villa.
lot of expansion in the county, and some of these subdivisions may have 1, 2, or 3 families in one building.
And if they have different accounts, then they have different ERUs associated with each of the accounts. Imagine a situation where you have one family who essentially is associated with two separate accounts. This really brings them back to just being associated with one account.
So if a person moves into a villa that's a 3-family building, he'll only have one account and pay one GRE. He will not pay for the other two.
No. If they have three separate accounts, they're going to have three separate ERUs associated with them. But if you
Mr.
have,
Johnson,
Another way of looking at this is there's a group of homes, which are, and this is what this ordinance covers, and it doesn't cover multifamily in the least bit. It covers basically a historical anomaly where there were single-family homes with only one family, but for some reason they ended up with two ERUs, so they were paying two base facility charges. All this allows is for that single-family home to be billed for one base facility charge based on the one ERU they're actually using and have been using over time.
in addition, you and Mr. Johnson purchased the property next to you, the parcel next to you. It comes with an ERU associated with it. If you join the deed, you're not going to develop. There's no reason for you to be paying that ERU.
Correct.
That is the biggest impact of this whole process.
I'd just like to make
There are
sure
unaccounted
that-
for ERUs dangling and people anticipating, or the county anticipating there might be development when there is no development anticipated whatsoever.
I'd
If
just
you
like to
own-
make sure that the people that move into our new homes that are moving into Indian River County, like Fellsmere, the ones that are talking about the future 1,000 acres of sand mine that they're talking about. I just like to make sure that these folks don't move into some subdivision and they should only be paying for one GRE and not for vacant
It's
GREs,
based on
or the
customary
lot-
usage.
Or the lot that's not, that the developer's still trying to sell.
Bob, everybody's going to pay exactly what they should be paying, no less, but no more than they should be. So this just makes it fair
Well,
all the way.
That's the definition of a single family. That's what I'm trying to make sure that we have a good definition of a single family in the ordinance, so that there's no confusion.
Yep. We're
Thank
good-
you.
We're
Thank you
we're
very
good on
much.
that. Yeah.
I see now that so that's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this topic? There's two podiums. Having given ample opportunity and seeing none come forward, we will now close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the ordinance.
Second?
And that's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Vice Chairman O'Brien. Any further discussion amongst the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you all. Next is a request on public discussion items. Is a request to speak from Patricia Hunt regarding public records request, courthouse and sheriff's department, and required drug testing for drug court judges.
Mr. Chairman, I do not see Ms. Hunt.
I do
in the
not see
audience, but we
Ms.
can
Hunt,
always
but I
allow
ask
her time when
the
she may show up.
indulgence of the commission to, if she comes here before the close of business today, that we hear her. That's close of the meeting business. We'll move on to a request to speak by Wilfred Hawk. Wilfred Hart would like to thank the Board of County Commissioners for what they have done in the community. Good morning, Mr. Hart.
Good morning. My name is Wilfred Hart, 617 19th Place Southwest, Vero Beach, Florida. I stand before you this morning on behalf of my father, Victor Hart Sr. He couldn't be here today because he had to go to his, he called it a aerobic class. Coach Staley, you know, he had that aerobics at the Gifford Youth Achievement Center. So he couldn't make it, but he wanted me to come here today and just thank this board for everything that they're doing for the community as a whole. From the Gary Chambliss sign to Wilson Chisholm football field to the renaming the park to Victor Hart Senior Community Enhancement Complex. He sees that as an honor. When I have been watching my daddy, he's like been going down, 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 but thank God to this board here, y'all have put some life back into my father. And I'm appreciative of that. See, I grew up in this town, and then, you know, from a kid to 17 years old, and I left here, went off to college, started with a company, and I've traveled all over the South, Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee for the company I worked for. And I had an opportunity to go to different, while I was there, I've always been like Curious George. I always want to see different things and see how government works and how this thing goes. And I must give this board here some credit. I gotta give you all the credit in the world. You're very conservative, but in this last year, I have seen a great turnaround for this, from this board as when it comes to your voting for the community as a whole. And Chairman Fletcher, under your leadership, we want to tell you thank you because you're the leader. But we know that you cannot do these things by yourself. And our good friend to the far left over there, Mr. Commissioner Solari.
Far right from where I sit.
Oh, you're right.
He's always on the right.
He started something with a bench for my daddy. Now, a lot of folks might think that little bench was just small and minute, but that meant a heck of a lot to him. And now we start seeing the progression in especially the Gifford community of the things that's going on. And I believe with all my heart that there's going to be more great things that are going to be going on in the Gifford community. Mr. Jason Brown, I'm getting to know him, and he's filling some big old shoes there. I'm a 15 wide, 16, and the man's shoes you're filling probably a size 22, and with a 12 size shoe that you're wearing. So it's going to be a great task for you. But I believe with all my heart that this commission is going to support everything that you're doing. And there's a few people that I need to thank, from Dave Fleetwood, the superintendent, which was really, really involved in this project. Mike Redstone from the Recreation, Assistant County Administrator Zito, Tony Brown, Sheila Smith, Leroy Smith, Coach Staley, my brother Donna Hart, Teddy Floyd, Catherine Washington, countless others. And we just want to just tell you, thank you. Now, I know you got your prophet in the house here, Prophet Zork, and his responsibility is to continue to pray for this board, that this board will continue to do the right thing. Now, Mr. O'Brien, our vice chairman, already had that conversation with you, so you know, I told you I'd see you in the future. So, but again, we want to thank our chairman, Brother Fletcher. I've been knowing you such a long time. We've had good days and we've had some bad days together. But you've always been straightforward with me, and I've always called you, and you don't always take my phone calls, but eventually you'll call me back. But I just want to thank you for your leadership, and I know the next chairman is going to continue doing what this board's supposed to do. Be conservative, but at the same time, support the total community. Thank y'all, thank you, and thank you.
Mr. Wilford Hart.
Well, you can't get away that easy.
No, Mr. Wilford Hart, I want to say thank you. It's not about one person. It's about what we have to work with. No man is effective alone. And I have to say that I have the privilege of honor of working with this board, and we have probably a record 5-0. Every one of the things you mentioned were 5-0. There are some 4-1s, but for the majority, we have a record 5-0, which means after careful debate, we've done it. The big news is that we have a great community to work with, a civil community that has expectations, and they do get delivered, but they get delivered after we have civil conversation and understanding, and then we knock on Jason's door about where the money's coming from, and Mike has to show us where the check is going to be. But in essence, I think the heart of what we have is with the community, and here with people who care for the community and care with the community. And guys like you make it real easy.
Thank you.
I just want you to know
because you said that, I have one more thing. Ms. Adams, you were on my mind this morning. And I was thinking about my daughter, which has a master's degree in nanotechnology. But she can't come back home because we don't have research facilities in this area. A lot of folk out of Indian River County working in massive different areas, building other cities' government, which we're allowing folks from different states to move in and now running our government. And we have some of the smartest people from St. Ed, Vero Beach High, Sebastian High. A broad range of our young people cannot come back home. So the charge I'm going to ask you to look into is to see what industries, and I don't mean these small industries, but what industries can come to our community that's paying good money so that our young people that are scattered all over the country can come back home and do some work for our community. We keep complaining about the folks standing on the corner in Gifford, but all our educated doctors and lawyers doing great work in everybody else's community but our own. And it's smart, I did some research on you because I don't know you, I know everybody else. And being as highly intelligent as you are, I think you would have a good ability to look into those things to see if we can get some businesses.
Oh, excuse me, sir. One question for you. How old is your dad today?
86 years old.
86.
Yes, sir.
And today he was so busy he couldn't be here because he's at an aerobics class.
Yes,
Just
sir.
wanted to clarify that.
Well,
Well, can you get us a picture of him at his aerobics class?
I will. I'll contact Coach and have Coach to sit at that.
I just, or tell me when it is, and I'll try to pop in and see it sometime because
It's at
that
the
would be
Gifford Youth
inspirational for me.
Go, I'm serious.
attend.
You can go. They have 70, 80, 90-some-year-old folks in there, and Coach Staley have them doing all these I need that one.
Commissioner, I think
I'm
what
just
happens in aerobics class stays in aerobics class.
No, it's at the Gift for Youth Achievement.
Yeah, because
All right.
I'm concerned that you may not be able to keep up with these
Well,
guys, so.
90-some years old, and they're in there doing the road.
and-
Well, that's great. Tell them we
Thank
give them
y'all.
our
God
best.
bless you. Keep
You know,
doing what you're doing.
At the Wilson Chisholm dedication, I know everyone was in attendance. Did you see Victor Hart? He looked as if he was going to hit the field and throw a helmet on. And, you know, just 2 weeks prior, what Wilfred said was absolutely true. I think that he's gotten a new spark, and we're very happy about that. All right, well, thank you. And I see Ms. Hunt has come in. So we're going to revert back to the previous request for public discussion.
Great.
Good morning.
Good morning. I apologize, it was a little late. There was a bad accident on 95, and I had a long drive to get here, so I appreciate you guys being kind enough to hear me. Commissioner Adams, I know you're fairly new, and I don't know much about your background, but I do know the rest of the background of the other county commissioners, and I've publicly spoken several times. And I'm publicly speaking again, having to do with a couple questions. I would like to know, if you guys know the answer, if you don't, maybe your county attorney can tell me, who is in charge of the Florida and oversees the Florida Ethics Committee for the state of Florida? And if you're not sure, you can get back to me on this, but the Florida Ethics Committee is a committee that was set up apparently by the state of Florida that is supposed to be overseeing having to do with ethics with the clerk of court, the courthouse, and having to do with any kind of formal complaints. And I would like to know if you don't know the answer, Dylan, to that, if you can research that and let me know.
Well, we are all familiar with that topic, but we'll defer back to counsel. I trust he has the answer that you're seeking.
So first off, with regards to, and I know your public speaking item, I believe, had referenced judges on there. I can tell you that any issues relating to judges should go to the Judicial Qualifications Commission.
And I'm aware of that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
Yeah.
No.
Now, my issue having to do with judges is I am actually going to be speaking with the Judiciary and the Florida Senate Committee, and also with the Department of Education. And I will be speaking with Betsy DeVos, who I actually previously worked for, who lives at Windsor Country Club. But I am actually literally speaking in reference to having and proposing that every drug court judge in the state of Florida be drug tested on a weekly basis, starting with Judge Cynthia Cox, based on evidence that I received mailed to me by the Florida Bar, which according to lawyers is legal and binding in a court of law. My second issue is I have come in here and asked for public records for several years now, and I have been pretty nice about it, and I've quoted the law, the state law, the Florida statute 11901 and 11907. Now, I know there's a gray area according to Governor Rick Scott's office, and I don't want to get into politics. I choose my battles wisely, so I have nothing against Governor Rick Scott. But apparently there was a public records issue some time ago having to do with emails and other things. I have asked for public records from the state attorney, Chris Taylor's office. As of yet, I have not gotten what I've asked for. I have also asked for the clerk of court, Jeffrey Smith. And I've asked for a list of employees from 2013, actually from 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, and now presently 17. I've asked for all full-time employees for the civil division and the clerk of court of Indian River County, first and last legal names. I have asked for any temporary people who've worked for the civil division, only the civil division. No other divisions do I have an issue with in Indian River County at the courthouse. I was informed when this all went down with myself and several other people that were denied public access to our court records during crucial times of our court case, both a slip and fall accident case and a federal aviation court case, which is going to be heard but not in the state of Florida. I have been told that they had obtained Eric Barquette. Mr. Barquette has been, we'll just say, elusive, evasive, whatever you want to say for your legal jargon term, as far as him not responding to my request. And this has not been one request. This has been years of requests asking for public records and specific information.
So, Ms. Hunt, Have you felt like you haven't gotten responses from Indian River County itself, like our office, when you've made public records requests?
Well, that's what I'm trying, not for your office as far as the
Well, that's
CDs
what we
go.
need to discuss, because quite frankly, we do have the legislative authority and the jurisdictional markings to go forward with any public records request that you have of this county, of this BOCC, or any of the departments.
So the
Any
sheriff's department
actions.
included?
No, that's where we go wrong
Okay.
on that. Actually, I was the former public information officer, and in the room is another one of the former public information officers of the Indian River County Sheriff's Office.
Can you tell me what year you were that position? There's a reason why I'm asking.
I would say 2003, 4,
Well, in
5,
2013, apparently FDLE.
2002.
Okay, in 2013, FDLE, Governor Rick Scott apparently replaced, and this was all public news, replaced the head of FDLE. And Indian River County in 2013 was found guilty, or however you want to put it, for mishandling public records for Indian River Sheriff's Department. Lieutenant Smith has now been removed from that office and promoted to a detective. And
Ms.
now
Hunt?
it's Lieutenant Sergeant Obala, I'm sorry, who I've asked numerous times for specific public records requests, including videotape inside the Indian River County Courthouse, which I still have not received.
And
Ms.
Ms.
Hunt, and we have no capacity to direct the sheriff's office to do anything with their public records. They need to have a custodian of record. They need to have a public information officer. They may have their legal division review everything that goes out, and they are to satisfy your request. And I suggest that you go back to the sheriff's office
I
and
have
make
numerous
that
times.
request and make it known for your request. But we have no capacity whatsoever here at the Board of County Commissioners to direct the sheriff. The only capacity we have is to oversee his budget.
Okay, so who oversees the sheriff? Attorney General Pam Bondi?
So if
I know
you-
he's an elected position, but who oversees him?
I mean, at the end of the day, Patricia Hunt, if you have an issue with the sheriff, and I'm just looking at a case I pulled up this morning that I've reviewed a couple times, if you've got a problem with the sheriff, you can take complaints to the.
We have filed complaints, several of us, over the last several years, and they've been buried in the ocean. Nobody's done anything about it.
You can, Ms. Hunt, you can take them to the governor's office.
We
just
have. We filed complaints with Governor, with Attorney General Pam Bondi.
You can take it to the state attorney's office. Unfortunately,
We have, and nobody's doing anything. It seems like they're all playing a big game with each other, and I guess whoever's the highest.
Ms. Hunt, the problem is, we've been told by the courts, not our job. This board cannot get involved in those types of issues.
So
the best
what-
I can do is direct you to either the state attorney, the governor, the attorney general, but we don't really have a place to play in this discussion.
So you guys have no jurisdiction over Indian River County, the state county courthouse building whatsoever?
On the building itself, yes, but if it's the clerk, or
The
if
clerk
it's the
and the
sheriff,
clerk
or
employees.
if it's the supervisor of elections, or it's the tax collector, the Board of County Commissioners just doesn't have the authority to get involved in those types of operations of a constitutional officer.
Each constitutional officer is to certify a custodian of records.
I'm aware of what the constitutional records, and I'm aware of what clerk of court,
Well-
Mr. Smith, is supposed to be doing.
Well, then if you're aware of what he needs to be doing, then it would have no matter here at the county commission.
Okay, my next question is do you guys know who is in charge over Secretary Julie Jones? And if you don't know who Secretary Julie Jones is, who I do not know, I've not met, but she is apparently over the state of Florida correctional facility for the state of Florida prison system. And I would like to know if you guys know who is over her. Is it the Attorney General Pam Bondi, or is it Governor Rick Scott?
I do not know.
Okay, all right. Well, they don't know either, apparently, at Citizen Services. So, all right, then I guess we'll be doing subpoenas. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is in the area of community development, which is a request for authorization to explore the extension of Aviation Boulevard and other access improvements in the vicinity of 37th Street corridor. Good morning, Mr. Bowling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
And
for the record.
good morning, Mr. Mattson.
And Mr. Madsen. I just want to say a few words before Phil takes you through a presentation, and that is probably for a little bit over a year, staff has been looking at the capital improvements element that we have to update periodically, and looking at the 37th Street widening project and variations on an idea that's been around for a while, and looking to, before we put a lot more effort into looking at the option, we wanted to present this concept to you all and hopefully get your authorization to move forward with an alternative to 37th Street. And I'll let Phil give you an orientation on that.
Yeah, and to take it one step further, not just to look at the concept, but to use the best tools we have to see if it'll work. So 37th Street widening's been on our radar screen for a long time. The current situation is this. It's beginning to exceed its adopted level of service. So a two-lane roadway like this has a capacity in each direction of 880 cars, particularly westbound in the peak hour. We're seeing 700 cars out there. We have another 97 who vested. So based on our concurrency system, we only have 83 trips available. So we're at about 90% of our level of service capacity. That's today. So by our 2040 long-range plan, we'd probably be well over capacity. And the problem is this. Put it this way. If you're sick in Indian River County, or even if you're healthy and getting a checkup, you're going to be on 37th Street. There's just no other way around it. So all of our medical trips are funneled there through sort of an accident of geography. To the south, we have the main relief canal, so it presents a rare interruption of our grid-level roadways. Conservation land to the east, the airport to the west, and the development patterns themselves with the Vero Beach Country Club and some of the long-standing development prevents us from putting a lot of roadways through. So you're pretty much forced onto, from the south, either the Boulevard or US 1 to 37th. From the north, same thing in reverse. Now, 36th Street is a little bit of an alternative, but it's pretty much, I find it to be, especially if I'm coming from the south, a one-way in situation, because there's no left turns on US 1 coming out of 36th. So then they're going to just have to go back and compound the problem by going out on 37th. So it's potentially getting much worse. I had one of our MPO staff do an inventory of developable land around the medical center. There's 1.672 million square feet of medical and office space now. South of 37th, 150 of 410 acres are vacant and zoned for commercial type development, office, medical. North, 160 of 260. So we're really only at about maybe 50% of our development potential in that node. And to my knowledge, there's no major alternative medical nodes planned elsewhere in the county. We obviously have Sebastian Hospital, which has been growing and taking some of the burden off. But there go the arrows again. So what are the challenges of 5-laning it? So our typical model is when a road reaches capacity, we start to plan for the widening of it. But it may not be the best idea in this situation. This is not a stage photograph, but this is really, I got this right off of Google Earth when I went down to the ground level view. So as you can see, there are 3 cars presumably trying to make a left turn. They're going northbound onto 37th, and they're going to have to wait for this long line of traffic here. And these are people who have just received medical treatment. They're probably older. Who knows? They might have had their pupils dilated or something, or orthopedic work. So you've got 3 cars trying to run the gamut here of making a left turn into a pretty steady flow. 27 different driveways and cross streets on 37th Street. So this makes it a very complicated roadway, 1.2 mile stretch. So 5-laning it, this is what we have. So these guys are trying to make the left. What you end up with is something that looks a little like this. And now you've got the same cars, but they're actually trying to run between, and hopefully we could build a refuge or something in here, both the eastbound and the westbound traffic. So they're trying to make the same weave to get out of here. And you can't really put a signal, closer than 200 or 300 feet apart. So, you're really going to end up with something like what we have at 53rd and 30 and US 1, which is pretty blown out intersection. It may not be the most aesthetic intersection, or it may not even work that well for the crowd that we're planning for. So there's cost, there's disruption. I could only imagine tearing 37th apart and channelizing traffic into one direction, one lane, 2 directions, 1 lane, with the medical crowd there while it's under construction, as well as right-of-way and drainage. So we try to take a look at some alternatives. And the fundamental question is, do they work? And we use something called pseudomus modeling, which is the state standard model. Bear with me on this one. you will be better educated on the fundamentals of transportation planning after the next 3 slides than most of my colleagues, sadly. But this will be real quick and interesting. So this is one we've seen before at the LRTP. The more alternatives you provide, you have an exponential number of routes. So 2 additional roads in this scenario to go from point A to point B gives you 6 routes. But if you put a lot of roads in, you got 35 routes. So you spread the traffic around, and that's what we're trying to get to. I'd rather have 2 little streets than 1 big street. And our model works on, not to take away from the science behind our models, but the illustrative manner, it's called a gravity model. So things like the hospital are Jupiter in the parlance of the gravity model. We put coefficients in that represent a big draw. Things like downtown, the courthouse, something like Saturn, maybe the theater, Majestic would be more like Mars, whatever. So the houses are the productions, the planets are the large attractions, and it's the art, transportation planning of balancing the productions with the attractions of putting on the road grid. So from Planet Matson up here by Devosta, when I go to the theater, I usually do 58th Avenue to 60 to US 1, but some of my neighbors go 53rd to US 1, and some of them take 58th all the way down to 16th Street. So there's different ways to do it, and the model also predicts what the traffic is likely to do given the constraints on those 3 roadways. We are using a state-of-the-art model. We're probably the smallest MPO in the country to use this, and this is courtesy of DOT and us pushing them to use it, but it's called a tour-based model. And that's because the old model is good at going from the production to the attraction and back, but the new model accounts for what people actually do, which is running a couple of errands to and from work and maybe even going out to lunch and back, and maybe even working an unconventional peak. And maybe not working at all, like in our case, we have a lot of retirees. So with this tour-based model, we create a synthetic population that looks like the actual population. There's the conventional 42-year-olds with children. There's a 61-year-old retirees. There's children and so forth. So we try to figure out what's in each neighborhood on small neighborhood-size units in our electronic model, and then we try to replicate their patterns of travel from other models from around the country. Bottom line is this, and a tour sort of looks more like what we actually do. So the bottom line is this: after running the model, the tour-based model, which is really the best one we have, under the old constraint with the 37th alone, and then running it again with the 2 alternative roadways, one extending Aviation Boulevard from Aviation at US 1 up to 37th, and a second idea, which was Stan's, dropping 11th Drive down from 41st Street to give you a north approach, we end up taking a lot of trips off 37th. So according to the model, we will get 5,600 cars to bite at that southern link, the Aviation Boulevard extension. The 11th Avenue, not so much, but it still takes a chunk out of it as well, 1,200 cars. So this has benefits beyond just 37th. The US 1 approaches to 37th has a lot less traffic as well. And those are some, pretty congested roadways. So whereas we had 17,000 cars predicted in the model on US 1 approaching 37th, we're down to 13,000 if we could put the aviation extension in. 37th itself seems to be the biggest beneficiary. It's losing about almost 4,000 cars. That's because these people are going to take the other alternatives, 11th Avenue and Aviation Boulevard. So that's the bottom line. I think our testing, which we've done, and DOT helped us with it a little bit, proves that getting from the one blue dot to the other, which is our logistic problem, is going to relieve 37th somewhat. The beauty of it is there's not a lot of the parcels are undeveloped in between those 2 points that we have to connect. This is what it looks like, more of a ground level, and some of the property owners that are in the way. In your agenda packet, we just conceptually toyed with some concepts for how to get, basically from that one blue dot to the other. And conclusions, reduced traffic not only on 37th but on US 1, which has the added advantage of making this attractive to DOT as a potential partner. I think it's less disruptive than closing 37th for the widening. There's some benefits to the property owners who are somewhat landlocked now, but there's some challenges with this. How much is it going to cost? How much cooperation can we expect? Who's going to own it? Who's going to maintain it? We're straddling 2 jurisdictions there, and that's always a problem. And then right-of-way. We need to get the right-of-way. So really all we're asking at this time is just to put this on your radar screen, let you know that this is a concept we're toying with, and get your authorization to continue studying some of those issues, right-of-way, cost, expense, the alternative, and so forth.
Chairman?
Any questions?
First of all, I want to thank you for this. This is one of those things which I hadn't thought about ahead of time, but which, once it's brought to your attention, and especially in a good presentation like this, it just pops up and goes, well, of course. I mean, and the idea of having a different road rather than just 5-laning 37th, I think is something we really ought to look at. I think it's initially a great idea. I mean, I'll just note, some of my fellow commissioners seem to have some medical problems once in a while, and I know that they go into the same area, and I understand there is a lot of stress. And I may even be visiting, those areas myself soon. But the road is already complex enough, and for some reason, the way the offices were built, they also have different ways of maneuvering about them, and we would certainly, I think, it'd benefit all the citizens of Indian River County if we reduce that complexity some. And I think this is a way. Could you go up and put the map, the physical map? This is, I think as you look at it, I'd like to have, yeah, and if you can widen it just a little bit to see the land to the east. I don't know if you can with that picture. Okay. That's good. We'll just leave it at that one. This is actually something I wasn't expecting to bring up today, but I mentioned it to Jason and Rich yesterday, and Rich thought it was such a great idea that I'm going to pursue it today. That's an area, and we all know we have problems with the water from US 1, and FDOT's got no place to put it. And so I would like, if you could, to, as you explore the road, and especially that area from Aviation Boulevard to the hospital node, to consider that rectangular piece, which the road's going to go through, at least in one version of it, through the middle, and see if we can't perhaps get that whole piece and turn it into a stormwater TMDL remediation project, passive remediation project, with, at the end of the day, having a pedestrian way around it. I think we might be able to do that if we incorporated a few things, for instance, US DOT water. And I only want to do this if we can make it so the marginal cost of doing the whole project is really no greater than the cost of just the road and the storm water attendant with the road. But there's a piece, Dr. Mallon's piece, that has a golf range on it now. And my guess is that golf range is more of a temporary use for the project, and then that will eventually be a commercial piece where about 20 to 25% would have to go into stormwater. And my understanding is Dr. Mallon owns the larger rectangular piece. So if we could do a pre-deal with Dr. Mallon, where we'll take all of his stormwater, even from the eye doctor place and that range, and put it into the new project. So if we do that, we may be able to get the piece of property at a much cheaper price, and then get with FDOT to see if they're interested in putting some of their US 1 water into the same project and allowing them to give us a substantial capital contribution. My understanding of FDOT, that is a direction that at least some of the FDOT people in Tallahassee would like to go, though it doesn't seem like District 4 has embraced that with the same enthusiasm as the Tallahassee people. So with all that, I think I want to thank you again for bringing the project to us. I think it's something we need to explore, and I'd like to make the motion for a staff recommendation.
Second.
In discussion?
That's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Adams. We have discussion.
Phil, looking at what you got there, at the very top is that Pickerel Lane. Is there an option to extend that further to the east and tie in as well?
Sure. It looks like there's some undeveloped parcels as well between Pickerel Lane and 35th, and it's an excellent idea.
So just maybe
Just sort of caught me cold, but yeah, not a bad idea.
throw that into when you're looking at things.
Mr.
And
Chairman.
actually, I'd be good with both options. Like you said, the more routes you add, the more potential exponential it grows. So just, kind of consider that as you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the mic was off. I think one advantage to aviation would be you'd have a fully signalized intersection, which DOT is actually studying now because it's having some problems. And the fully signalized intersection will allow your exiting traffic to be able to make a left turn. Pickerel might have that 36th Street syndrome in that it might be a good one-way in. On the other hand, Pickerel will connect to a place that 36 doesn't. So
Yeah.
I see
Good.
Rich standing up here. I don't know.
Just think about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner Saul.
Yes, a couple of items. One, regarding the golf plans for Dr. Mallon, what they're working in now is what I call phase one of a two-phase project. They had to get some planting cycles in for some things they're going to start next year. But I've seen plans for what I would say is a multi-million-dollar golf facility fronting US 1 that utilizes the range in the back. So I'm sure we can reach out to him to see if those plans are still intact, but I've met with some of the representatives from Dr. Mallon on some of the issues regarding some of the aspects of that project. Secondly, on the stormwater project, I think the first place we need to go to before the conversation gets too far, that water body would be right in line of the flight path for the north runway. FDOT and FAA have some prohibitions of water bodies that attract birds into the flight path. So that could put that good idea onto the sidelines fairly quick, because if you were to zoom out on that and look, I know at the north water tower, just to the left of the US 1 designation, if you were to look at that flight path, that I'm going to say it's going to be pretty close to the area that they like to have clear and no water bodies that would create an opportunity for birds to live in the water and then take off and become obstructions for the flight path. One of the earlier questions I had, so I don't know if we want to flush that out first to make sure to see where the airport and the FAA would fall on creating a water body at the end. But if you see the north runway, and there's also some expansions of taxiways and some other things to the north. But if you look where the runway goes over that property, I think that could be an issue that I think we'd like to get figured out early on into the process to make sure that's not going to cause an unintended consequence. When your question of to move forward, what would be the path? Would you go to one of our engineers of record that we already have agreements with and say, hey, give us 5 ways to look at this, or multiple ways to look at solutions? To me, when we do these, I don't want to create a situation where if we put a road in, again, setting aside the water facility concept for the moment, but I don't want to put in a road that creates challenging parcels for the owner to then have to work through, and we've gone through those in some eminent domain takings where we caused a hardship because of the path of the road, and we want to just try to stay away from those if we can.
Yes, good question. I think there's a lot of moving parts, which is why we wanted to come to you all with the concept, but also understanding this is an alternative to widening 37th Street. That's still on the table, because we might not be able to pull this off. So we've got a lot of stakeholders to contact. We've got the hospital, which is a big player in this as well, and looking at the campus, and then eventually maybe having an extension of a signalized intersection at 37th Street that will connect North-South Road up to 41st Street as well. So we would need to get the stakeholders together to kind of at least have initial discussions on the concept with them, and then I think the next phase would be to hire somebody to come in with some preliminary design work at that point. But we need we've talked to city staff before, we've had some informal discussions, but we wanted to get this in front of you all so we could actually move forward and get stakeholders together and just start conceptual discussions.
Right. So I think whatever we can eliminate as obstacles.
And these are all good ideas we're getting from you all in terms of things that we need to take a look at.
So I think first would be is how do we determine the most effective path, and then you see what you have left to work with to see what's the best use of that property. But Commissioner Slar, could you restate what your motion is again?
Well, basically, I think the staff's request was fairly simple, to see if the board favors the idea of looking at an alternative route to 5-laning 37th. So the basis of my motion is simply to say, if there's 2 other votes, that yes, the Board of County Commissioners thinks it would be a good idea to look at alternative routes. So everything both of us have said and anything that any other commissioners said would be tossed into the mix. I mean, I think that's what our staff does when you talk about building a new job. You immediately look at all the, both opportunities and all the problems with it before we start spending a lot of money. But they just want to, as I understood it, get our approval to take that step. And again, when I hadn't thought about the idea of problems of 5-laning 37th until this issue came before us. But I think that if an alternative route will work in a cost-effective manner without causing a whole bunch of other problems, then it would be a great thing. I just see too many problems immediately once the staff, brought to the idea that you might 5-lane 37th. I think that's exactly the wrong place to put 5 lanes of road. So again, I'd like to commend staff for bringing this idea to us, and I think that it's something that would be good for the whole county if we took a good hard look at it and see if there were any viable alternatives. So that's the motion.
Well, it's a heavily used area and with great anticipated
To be much
increased
heavier,
usage.
much
Yes.
heavier used.
So that's your motion, and your second stands.
Correct. My second does stand, and I would just like to say that I think this is a great project. It's a great option. I'm really excited about it, and I would agree with Phil's statement that many smaller roads are better than a few larger roads, especially in our community, and to keep that community feel that we have. I would also encourage you guys maybe to look at this similar situation in other areas of the county before development kind of happens. It's easier to map out the general idea of where we want our roads to go and kind of get that land ahead of time versus trying to go back through an eminent domain process.
And just for the record, today is preliminary. We are authorizing staff, if this motion goes forward, to authorize staff to go deeper into this. There will be additional staff time. We are carving out the option. We're not carving out the roadway just yet. And they will determine what the needs and expectations are, and this will be the next step. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Anything further from the board? On motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
We now move to special districts and boards, and we have the approval of the minutes for the meeting of August 15, 2017 for emergency services, and the approval of the minutes for the meeting of September 12th,
So moved.
2017. And that's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Adams. And any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Next item is the approval of the 2017-2018 EMS County Awards Grant, which purchase of capital operating equipment using non-matching EMS grant funds and grant resolution.
Move staff recommendation.
Second. That's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by myself. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Commissioners, this concludes my final meeting, full meeting, as chairman of this esteemed county commission. I want to thank you all for what we have accomplished this year and all of the tolerance and support that you have offered, and I think that it's been a great year. With that, I'll open up the next meeting, and we will have the reorganizational meeting, and choose wisely. We have an additional tough year ahead of us. Thank you all. This meeting is now adjourned.